Millionaire yelled at Nanny. She left in tears without telling anyone. Twins refused to eat, and he regretted it. Hi, my most beautiful family. Let's start with a prayer. Dear God, thank you for this loving YouTube family. Heal me and bless them all with peace, health, and joy. Amen. This is your Mr. Peter. I'm still in New York for treatment, but your love and prayers are my strength. I miss you all so much. Please remember, if you see my videos on another channel, they're stolen. People are copying my voice and uploading edited versions. Unsubscribe from them and stay loyal to our real home, this channel. To my new family members, welcome. Introduce yourself in the comments. I truly want to know you. And please, don't leave the story midway. If the intro feels long, skip it. Your like and comment can protect this channel. James will be here while I recover. I'll return soon, with more love than ever. Now, let's enjoy today's story together.
The devil himself couldn't have looked more terrifying than Charles Laplante at 7:30 on that fateful Tuesday morning. Exactly 3 years to the day since Elena had died in his arms, whispering her final words about finding someone to love their girls when the darkness came. "Get them under control, or get out of my house." His voice cracked through the air like thunder, each word dripping with barely contained fury as he surveyed the chaos before him. Orange juice pooled across the pristine white Italian marble countertop, the same marble Elena had chosen for their dream kitchen, dripping steadily onto the hand-woven Persian rug beneath, a rug that cost more than most people earned in a year. Cereal scattered like confetti across the polished floor, and in the center of the disaster sat 7-year-old twins, Owona and Kara, their identical chocolate-brown eyes, Elena's eyes, wide with shock at their father's explosive rage. Lirael's breath caught in her throat as she instinctively moved between the children and their father's wrath. At 28, she had weathered many storms in the Laplante household during her year of employment, but nothing had prepared her for the glacial fury blazing in Charles's steel-gray eyes this morning. Her hands trembled as she reached for the dish towel, her heart hammering against her ribs so violently she was certain everyone could hear it. There was something different about today, something that felt like destiny colliding with destruction. "Mr. Laplante, please," she said softly, her melodic voice, the one that reminded him painfully of wind chimes Elena used to love, cutting through the tension that filled the room like poison. "They're just children. They were only playing. Just children." Charles's laugh was harsh and bitter, slicing through her words like shattered glass. "Just children who have destroyed this kitchen, ruined a $15,000 rug, and turned my home into a war zone on the one day I can't—" He stopped himself, his jaw clenching as he fought against words that wanted to spill out. The anniversary, Elena's death day, the day he lost everything that mattered. He stepped closer, his imposing 6'3" frame dwarfing her petite 5'5" figure. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Lirael. This chaos, this catastrophe that follows wherever you take them." The twins shrank back in their chairs, and Lirael felt her protective instincts surge like a mother lion defending her cubs. These beautiful little girls had already endured so much, losing their mother to cancer when they were only 4, and now their father seemed determined to push away everyone who dared to love them. "Sir, with respect, today marks 3 years since their mother. Don't—" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow felt more menacing than his shouting. "Don't you dare bring my wife into this mess. You think because you've been here 12 months, you understand this family? You think you have the right to speak about matters that don't concern you? But they did concern her. More than he knew, more than she could ever tell him. Hidden in her room upstairs was a letter that had found its way to her through channels she couldn't explain, written in a dying woman's handwriting. A letter that had guided her to this house, to these children, to this broken man who needed saving as much as his daughters did. Elena's letter. Each word struck her like a physical blow, calculated to wound and diminish. Lirael straightened her spine, drawing upon every ounce of dignity she possessed. I think these children need someone who cares more about their emotional well-being than about expensive furnishings. The silence that followed was deafening. Charles's face drained of color, then flushed crimson as his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. When he spoke again, his voice was like winter itself. How dare you? How dare you stand in my kitchen, in my house, and presume to lecture me about my own children? He moved closer still, near enough that she could detect his expensive cologne, and witness the rage burning in his eyes that looked so much like his daughter's, eyes that held the same pain Elena had described in her letter. You're the help, Lirael, nothing more than hired staff. And it's time you remembered exactly where you belong. The words struck her like a physical slap. Your place, as if she were nothing more than a piece of furniture, a temporary convenience to be discarded when she became troublesome. Behind her, she heard Kara begin to cry, soft, heartbroken sobs that made Lirael's chest ache with shared pain. But Elena's letter had warned her about this moment. He will push you away, the dying woman had written. He will try to make you leave when the pain becomes too much. Don't let him. Fight for them, even when he's fighting against you. My place, she repeated, her voice growing stronger despite the tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. My place has been holding this family together while you buried yourself in work and refused to confront your grief. My place has been loving those little girls when their own father was too shattered to truly see them. Charles's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. Pack your belongings. I want you out of this house within the hour. The world seemed to shift beneath her feet. Lirael stared at him, searching his face desperately for any trace of the man Elena had described in her letter. The man who could love deeply but was drowning in his own pain. The man who needed her as much as his daughters did. But that man had vanished, replaced by this cold stranger who regarded her like something unpleasant he'd discovered on his shoe. Charles, she began, forgetting protocol in her shock. Mr. Laplant, he corrected sharply. And you heard me clearly. 1 hour. Behind her, both twins had dissolved into desperate tears, their small voices calling out, Miss Lirael, between sobs. The sound shattered something fundamental in her chest, but she forced herself to stand straight, to preserve what remained of her dignity. Elena's letter had prepared her for this too. When he sends you away, it had said, Go, but don't go far. They'll need you to come back when the darkness threatens to swallow them whole. Very well, she said quietly, surprised by how steady her voice sounded, despite the storm raging inside her. I'll gather my things. She turned toward the children, her heart breaking at the sight of their tear-streaked faces. Owona reached out for her with desperate little hands, and Lirael had to grip the counter to prevent herself from gathering the child into her arms. I have to go now, my darlings, she whispered, her voice finally cracking under the weight of her sorrow. But remember what Miss Lirael always tells you, okay? You are brilliant and beautiful and brave, and you are so deeply loved. Never forget that you are treasured beyond measure. No. Kara leaped down from her chair, her small arms wrapping around Lirael's legs in a desperate embrace. Don't go. Please don't leave us. Kara, sweetheart. Girls, go to your rooms. Now. Charles's voice sliced through the moment like a blade, cold and final. But the twins remained frozen, clinging tighter to Lirael as their sobs grew more heartbroken. I said now, Charles thundered, his composure finally cracking completely. Come along, my precious ones, Lirael whispered, gently extracting herself from their desperate grip with practiced care. Go upstairs. Miss Lirael needs to gather her belongings. She couldn't bring herself to meet Charles's gaze as she walked past him, couldn't bear to witness whatever satisfaction or regret might be written there. Her legs felt leaden as she climbed the marble staircase to her modest room on the third floor, the space that had been her sanctuary for the past 12 months, where she'd harbored impossible dreams about becoming truly part of this fractured family. In her room, she pulled out Elena's letter one more time, reading the familiar words that had brought her here. To the woman who will save my family, I don't know your name yet, but I've seen you in my dreams. You have a voice like music and eyes that see straight to the heart of things. You'll come to them when they need you most, when Charles has forgotten how to love and my girls have forgotten how to laugh. He will resist you. He will hurt you. He will send you away. But you'll come back. You have to come back, because you're the only one who can save them all. Elena. 45 minutes later, her meager possessions were packed into 2 battered suitcases. She owned so little, really. A year of her life, countless precious memories, and a love for 2 little girls that would haunt her forever. Through the walls, she could hear them crying in their bedroom down the hall, calling her name over and over with increasing desperation. Charles waited by the front door when she descended the stairs, his face an impassive mask that revealed nothing. He didn't speak as she set her suitcases down, didn't even acknowledge her presence directly. "The children," she began softly. "We'll adjust," he cut her off, his voice devoid of emotion. "They don't need someone who undermines parental authority." Lirael studied him for a long moment, memorizing the sharp angles of his aristocratic face, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the mouth that had never kissed her but had lived in her dreams for countless nights. Elena had been right about everything. His pain, his pride, his desperate need for someone to fight for him even when he was fighting against them. "I hope someday you remember what it feels like to love someone more than your pride," she said quietly, her voice carrying a dignity that surprised them both. "And I pray it won't be too late when you finally do." She lifted her suitcases and walked through the door without a backward glance, even as the twins' cries grew more desperate and heart-wrenching. The Miami sun blazed mercilessly as she stood on the circular driveway, suddenly homeless with nowhere to go and no means of transportation. Behind her, the massive oak door of the LaPlante mansion closed with a final echoing thud that seemed to seal her fate. But Elena's letter was still tucked safely in her purse, along with a phone number and an address where she was supposed to go, where she was supposed to wait, where she was supposed to prepare for the moment when Charles Laplante's world would crumble completely, and he would finally understand that some miracles come disguised as the very thing you're most afraid to lose. She had no way of knowing that in 6 days his daughter would stop breathing. She had no way of knowing that she would be the one to save her, and she had no way of knowing that Eleanor Richardson LaPlante had orchestrated every moment of this from beyond the grave, determined to give her family the love they deserved, even if it meant breaking their hearts first. Chapter 2. Echoes of Broken Hearts. 6 days of absolute silence in the LaPlante mansion felt like 6 years in purgatory, and Charles was beginning to understand that he might have unleashed something far more devastating than his own grief. He might have awakened the very curse Elena had warned him about in her final days. "Promise me," she had whispered in the hospital, her hand gripping his with surprising strength for someone so close to death. "Promise me you won't let the darkness win. Promise me you won't push away the angel I'm sending to save you all." He had promised, but he had lied. The twins hadn't spoken a single word since Lirael walked out that door. Not to him, not to each other, not even to Mrs. Rodriguez, the elderly housekeeper who had been desperately trying to coax them into eating something, anything, for the past 144 hours. They sat at the breakfast table like two beautiful specters, their identical chocolate-brown eyes staring straight ahead with an emptiness that made Charles's chest constrict with something perilously close to terror. But it was worse than simple silence. They were fading, literally fading before his eyes, growing paler and thinner each day, as if Lirael had taken their very life force with her when she left. "Girls, please," he pleaded for what felt like the 1,000th time that morning, pushing their untouched plates of scrambled eggs and buttered toast closer to them. "You have to eat something. You're going to make yourselves sick, and Miss Lirael wouldn't want—" Owona's sharp glare cut him off mid-sentence, her 7-year-old eyes holding more accusation than any courtroom jury could muster. But it was what she whispered next that stopped his heart cold. "Mama said you would do this." Charles felt the blood drain from his face. "What did you say?" "Mama came to me in a dream," Kara said quietly, speaking for the first time in 6 days. "She said you would send the angel away because you're too scared to love again. She said we have to be strong until you remember how." The kitchen spun around him. Elena had been appearing to his daughters in dreams, speaking to them about Lirael. "She showed us the lady with the music voice," Owona continued, her voice hollow but determined. "She said the lady would save us all if we could just hold on long enough." Before Charles could process this revelation, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house, followed by familiar masculine voices. Charles closed his eyes, recognizing the footsteps of his two closest friends, even before they materialized in the kitchen doorway. "Sweet Jesus, Charles." Hawthorne Sterling's voice carried a mixture of shock and revulsion as he surveyed the scene before him. At 36, the tech mogul was rarely rendered speechless, but the sight of the twins' obvious distress and their frightening physical deterioration had stolen his usual silver tongue. "What in God's name have you done?" Aurelius Knight followed close behind, his dark eyes immediately focusing on the children with the laser intensity that had made him one of Miami's most successful real estate developers. "Owona, Kara," he said gently, crouching down to their eye level. "Uncle Aurelius brought you some cookies from that French bakery you love, the ones with the rainbow sprinkles and the chocolate centers." Neither girl acknowledged his presence. They might as well have been carved from marble. "They haven't eaten in 6 days," Charles admitted, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and something that might have been genuine fear. "They won't speak, won't respond to anything. They just sit there like they're waiting for something that's never going to come." "Waiting for someone," Kara corrected quietly, her voice barely audible but cutting through the room like a blade. "Mama said she's coming back." "Where's Lirael?" Hawthorne demanded, though, from the grim expression on his face, Charles suspected he already knew the devastating answer. "I terminated her employment." The silence that followed was thunderous. Aurelius slowly rose to his full height, his expression darkening like storm clouds gathering over Biscayne Bay. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "You did what, exactly?" "She was insubordinate, disrespectful. She overstepped her boundaries and—" "Her boundaries?" Hawthorne's voice rose an octave in disbelief. "Her boundaries were taking care of your children, you absolute fool. Her boundaries were being the only stable force in their lives after you spent 3 years drowning in your own misery." "You don't understand," Charles said desperately. "It was the anniversary, Elena's death day, and Lirael was there in Elena's kitchen, acting like she belonged, like she had the right to— To what? To love your children." Aurelius moved closer, his presence imposing in the way that had intimidated countless business rivals over the years. "To care for them when their own father was too lost in his guilt to see them suffering." "Elena asked me to find someone," Charles whispered, the words torn from somewhere deep inside him. "In the hospital, she made me promise, but when Lirael came, when she fit so perfectly into our lives, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle that Elena might have been right about everything. Hawthorne and Aurelius exchanged a look that Charles couldn't interpret. Charles, Hawthorne said carefully, what exactly did Elena say to you in the hospital? The memory crashed over Charles like a tsunami. Elena, pale and weak, but somehow radiant, gripping his hand with surprising strength. There's a woman coming, she had whispered. I've seen her in my dreams. She has a voice like music, and she'll love our girls like they're her own. She'll save you too if you let her. How will I know it's her? He had asked, humoring what he thought were morphine-induced hallucinations. You'll know. Elena had smiled. Because she'll make you so angry you'll want to send her away. That's how you'll know she's the one. The woman who can break through your walls is the one you'll fight the hardest. Elena knew, Charles said quietly, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. She knew Lyrael was coming. She described her perfectly. And God help me, I sent her away because she was exactly what Elena said she would be. Then fix it, Aurelius said simply. Find her and bring her home. I tried calling. I sent texts. She won't answer. Did you try groveling? Hawthorne asked acidly. Did you try apologizing for being a colossal ass? Did you try explaining that you're an emotionally damaged idiot who destroyed the best thing that ever happened to his family? Before Charles could answer, Kara spoke again, her voice ethereal and strange. She's with the teacher lady. Mama showed me in my dream, the one with the kind eyes who smells like books and coffee. She's waiting for you to come get her, but you have to hurry. Charles felt his knees buckle. Kara, how could you possibly? Mama knows things now, Owona said matter-of-factly. She said the angel is sad and hungry too, just like us. She said if you don't go soon, she might give up and fly away forever. Hawthorne was already pulling out his phone. What's the nanny agency's name? I'm calling them now. It won't matter, Kara said, her voice growing weaker. She won't come back unless Daddy says the magic words. What magic words? Charles asked desperately. Both twins looked at him with their mother's eyes, and when they spoke, it was in perfect unison, as if Elena herself was speaking through them. I'm sorry, I love you. Please come home. Meanwhile, across town, in a small apartment that smelled of coffee and hope, Lyrael sat curled up on her friend Mahola's threadbare couch, staring at Elena's letter for the 100th time in 6 days. 23 missed calls from an unknown number, dozens of text messages she couldn't bring herself to read. You need to eat something, Mahola said gently, settling down beside her with 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea. The elementary school teacher had taken one look at Lyrael's tear-stained face 6 days ago and immediately opened her door without questions or judgment. I keep having dreams about her, Lyrael whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears and exhaustion. Elena, she comes to me and tells me to wait. She says it's not time yet. Mahola's eyebrows rose. Dreams about Charles's dead wife? She's not dead, Lyrael said quietly. Not really. I can feel her everywhere, in that house with those children, in the very air around Charles. She's still protecting them, still guiding them, still trying to bring us together. Honey, that sounds crazy, I know. But Mahola, what if some love is so strong it transcends death? What if Elena really did arrange for me to find that family? What if this is all part of her plan? Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call or text. It was a video message from an unknown number. With trembling hands, Lyrael opened it. The screen filled with Elena's face, thinner than in the family photos, but unmistakably beautiful even in the hospital bed. She was looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to see across time itself. If you're watching this, Elena's voice was weak but clear, then you're the woman I've been waiting for, the one I've been dreaming about. Your name is Lirael, and you have a voice like music." Lirael gasped, nearly dropping the phone. "I made this video 2 days before I died," Elena continued. "I don't know how it will find its way to you, but I know it will. Charles has your number in his phone under Angel. He won't remember putting it there, but he did, because I told him to while he was sleeping." Tears streamed down Lirael's face as Elena smiled from beyond the grave. "Right now, you're probably sitting in a small apartment that smells like coffee, wondering if you imagined everything. You didn't. I brought you to them. I chose you. And when the time is right, when Charles has suffered enough to understand what he's lost, you'll go back." The video shook slightly as Elena leaned closer to the camera. "Take care of my girls. Love them like they're your own. And Charles, be patient with him. He's forgotten how to trust love, but you'll remind him. You'll save them all." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she delivered her final message. "Tell him I kept my promise. Tell him the angel is real. Tell him it's time to stop running from grace." The video ended, leaving Lirael sobbing in Mahola's arms. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. "Lirael?" Charles's voice was broken, desperate. "Please, my daughters won't eat. They won't speak. They're dying without you, and I think I am too." Through her tears, she whispered the words Elena had taught her to say, "I'll be right there." Because some promises are kept across the veil of death, and some love stories are written in heaven before they ever begin on earth. Chapter 3. Pride Before the Fall. The hurricane that was Deliverance La Plante arrived at Charles's front door, like an avenging angel descended from heaven, her designer heels clicking against marble with the precision of gunshots, and her emerald eyes blazing with righteous fury that could have reduced steel to ash. But it was what she carried in her hands that would change everything. "What in God's name have you done to my nieces?" she demanded, sweeping past Charles without so much as a greeting kiss, her perfectly styled auburn hair whipping behind her like a battle standard. At 42, Charles's older sister had built a media empire in New York through sheer force of will and an absolute inability to back down from any fight, qualities that made her a formidable businesswoman and an absolutely terrifying sister when her family was threatened. But today she carried Elena's journal. Charles barely had time to close the door before she was striding toward the kitchen, her sharp gaze cataloging every detail of the house with the efficiency of a detective surveying a crime scene. "Margaret Richardson called me. She said the girls haven't eaten in 6 days and that you've lost your mind completely." "Deliverance, I can explain." "Oh, you'll explain, all right." She spun around to face him, her emerald eyes, so much like his own, flashing with an anger he hadn't witnessed since they were children. "But first, I want to see my nieces immediately. And then, little brother, you and I are going to have a conversation about Elena's final wishes." She found them exactly where Margaret had described, sitting at the kitchen table like two beautiful ghosts, their untouched breakfast growing cold and congealing in front of them. The sight hit Deliverance like a physical blow, all her fury temporarily replaced by heartbreak as she took in their hollow eyes and increasingly gaunt faces. "Oh, my sweet girls," she whispered, moving to kneel between their chairs with practiced grace. "Aunt Deliverance is here now." For a moment neither twin responded. Then Kara's bottom lip began to tremble, and she threw herself into Deliverance's arms with a sob that seemed to come from her very soul. "She's gone, Aunt Deli. Daddy made the angel go away, just like Mama said he would, and now she's gone forever and ever." Deliverance held her niece close, her eyes finding Charles over the little girl's head. When she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet and twice as dangerous. "The angel? Mama told us about her in our dreams," Owona said softly. "She said Daddy would send her away because he's scared of love. She said we had to be brave until he remembered how to let people save him." Charles felt the world tilt sideways. How could they possibly know? Because, Deliverance said grimly, setting Kara gently back in her chair and standing to face her brother. Elena wrote it all down. She held up the leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age and marked with ribbons. Every dream, every vision, every single thing she saw about the woman who would come to save you all. The journal seemed to pulse with otherworldly energy in her hands. Margaret found this yesterday while cleaning out Elena's old desk. She'd hidden it behind a false panel, along with instructions that it should only be given to you when you'd made the biggest mistake of your life. Deliverance's voice dripped with condemnation. Congratulations, Charles. According to Elena's timeline, you're right on schedule. Charles stared at the journal as if it were a live snake. I don't want to read it. Too bad. Deliverance opened it to a page marked with a red ribbon. Listen to this entry, dated 1 week before she died. I dreamed of her again last night. The woman with the music voice. Her name starts with an L, and she has kind eyes that see straight through to the soul. She'll come to Charles and the girls when they need her most, exactly 3 years and 6 days after I'm gone. Charles felt his knees buckle. 3 years and 6 days. That was exactly when Lirel had walked out his door. There's more, Deliverance continued relentlessly. Charles will send her away because he's terrified of loving someone new. He'll use cruel words that will cut her to the bone. He'll make her feel small and unwanted because that's easier than admitting she's everything we've been praying for. Stop, Charles whispered. The girls will refuse to eat. They'll grow weak and pale because their spirits will be crying out for the mother love they've been denied. And when the darkness threatens to swallow them completely, when one of them stops breathing. Stop, Charles roared, but Deliverance continued reading. That's when he'll finally understand that some gifts come wrapped in pain, and some angels have to be fought for instead of simply received. The kitchen fell silent except for the twins' quiet sniffling and the sound of Charles's ragged breathing. One of them stops breathing, Charles repeated hoarsely. Elena wrote that? Oh, she wrote much more than that. Deliverance flipped through several pages. She described Lirael's appearance down to the way she braids her hair. She predicted the exact words you would use to send her away. She even knew about the orange juice spill that would trigger your breakdown. Charles sank into a chair, his legs no longer able to support him. How is that possible? Because love doesn't die, you fool, Deliverance said, her voice breaking with emotion. Because Elena loved you and those girls so much that she found a way to keep protecting you even from beyond the grave. And you threw it all away because you were too proud and too scared to believe in miracles. Owona spoke up suddenly, her voice ethereal and strange. Mama says you have to go get her now, before the bad thing happens. What bad thing? Charles asked, fear clutching at his heart. Kara's eyes rolled back slightly, and when she spoke, it wasn't quite her own voice. The little heart will stop beating unless the angel comes home. The music voice is the only thing that can call it back. Charles felt ice-cold terror shoot through his veins. Deliverance, we need to find Lirael. Right now. Yes, Deliverance agreed grimly, closing the journal. You absolutely do. Because according to Elena's final entry, you have exactly 2 hours before everything she predicted comes to pass. 2 hours later, Charles found himself in neighborhoods of Miami he'd never seen before. Elena's journal clutched in his trembling hands as he followed the address Deliverance had found through her media contacts. His silver Bentley felt obscenely out of place among the modest houses and community gardens. But he no longer cared about appearances or propriety. Elena's words echoed in his mind. You'll find her with the woman who smells like books and coffee, the one with the kind heart who takes in strays. She'll be waiting. But she won't wait forever. The angel has her own breaking point. He sat outside the cheerful yellow duplex, reading Elena's final entry. My darling Charles, if you're reading this, then my plan is working. Yes, I had a plan. Call it love, call it determination, call it a dying woman's last desperate attempt to save her family. But I wasn't going to leave this world without ensuring you had everything you needed to be happy again. Lirelle is my gift to you. I chose her. I called her to you across time and space, and the veil between worlds. She doesn't know it yet, but she's been dreaming of you and the girls for years, being prepared for this moment. You will hurt her. You will send her away. You will nearly lose Kara because of your pride. But then you will remember what I taught you about fighting for love instead of against it. You will go to her and you will say the words that will heal everything. I'm broken, but I want to be whole. I'm scared, but I want to be brave. I'm lost, but I want to come home. Please help me remember how to love. And she will, because that's what angels do. All my love from beyond the stars, Elena. P.S. Tell her I said thank you for keeping my promise. She'll know what that means. Charles climbed out of his car with Elena's journal clutched against his chest like a shield. The front door opened before he could knock, revealing a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. You must be Charles, she said simply. I'm Mahola. She's been waiting for you. Is she heartbroken, hungry, holding on to Elena's letter like it's the only thing keeping her tethered to this world? Mahola's eyes were kind but stern. Elena told her you'd come, but she's starting to lose faith. Elena told her, through dreams, through signs, through a video message that appeared on her phone yesterday. Mahola stepped aside to let him enter. I don't pretend to understand how these things work, but I know love when I see it. And what Elena did for you all, that's love in its purest form. Charles followed Mahola through the small apartment to a sun-drenched living room where Lirelle sat by the window, holding what looked like Elena's letter. She looked up when he entered, and he saw his own pain reflected in her dark eyes. You came, she said softly. Elena's journal, he said, holding it up. She wrote it all down. Everything. She knew you were coming. She chose you. She's been guiding us toward each other from the very beginning. Lirelle's eyes filled with tears. I know. She's been visiting me in dreams ever since I left, telling me to wait, telling me to have faith. She stood slowly, Elena's letter still clutched in her hand. She also told me what's going to happen next. The journal says Kara is going to stop breathing. Yes. In approximately 37 minutes if we don't get back to them right now. Charles felt his world collapse. How can you possibly know that? Lirelle smiled through her tears, and for a moment she looked exactly like Elena. Because some love is stronger than death, Charles, and some angels keep their promises no matter what. She walked to him and placed Elena's letter in his hands. Your wife asked me to tell you something. What? She kept her promise. The angel is real. It's time to stop running from grace. Charles read Elena's letter with tears streaming down his face, understanding finally that his wife's love had transcended death itself to bring them together. I'm broken, he whispered, just as Elena had written he would. But I want to be whole. I'm scared, but I want to be brave. I'm lost, but I want to come home. Please help me remember how to love. Lirelle cupped his face in her hands, and when she spoke, it was with Elena's blessing and heaven's approval. Then let's go save our daughter. And as they raced through Miami toward a destiny written in the stars, Elena's spirit smiled from whatever realm love inhabits beyond death, knowing that some promises are kept across eternity itself. Chapter 4. storms and surrenders. Lightning split the Miami sky as Lirael faced the man who had shattered her world, and Charles couldn't help but think that even nature was responding to the supernatural forces Elena had set in motion, forces that were about to converge in this moment of reckoning. The storm wasn't just in the sky. It was in Lirael's dark eyes as she stepped onto Mahola's small front porch, Elena's letter clutched in her hand like a talisman. It was in the way the wind seemed to swirl around them both, carrying the scent of jasmine and rain and something else, something that felt like Elena's presence, like a blessing and a warning combined. "You want to talk?" Lirael's voice was deceptively calm, but Charles could see the fire building beneath the surface, a fire that Elena had warned him about in her journal. "She will be magnificent in her anger," Elena had written. "Let her burn, let her rage. It's the only way the healing can begin. Then let's talk about how you called me hired help in front of your daughters," Lirael continued, stepping closer. "Let's talk about how you made me feel like dirt beneath your expensive Italian shoes. Let's talk about how you fulfilled every single prediction Elena made about your cowardice." The words hit him like physical blows, each one deserved and devastating. They stood facing each other as the storm gathered overhead, two souls dancing on the edge of destiny, while Elena's spirit watched from whatever realm love inhabits beyond death. "But mostly," Lirael said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting, "let's talk about how we have 23 minutes to get back to your daughters before Kara stops breathing." Charles felt his blood turn to ice. 23 minutes? Elena's been showing me the timeline in my dreams. Kara's heart will go into arrhythmia at exactly 4:47 p.m., unless we're there to prevent it. Unless I can perform the CPR that will save her life. Lirael's eyes filled with tears. "Your wife orchestrated all of this, Charles. Every cruel word you spoke, every moment of pain we've both endured. It was all to bring us to this exact moment. I don't understand. Elena needed you to send me away so I would go to the CPR class," Lirael said, pulling a certificate from her purse, dated just 3 days ago. "She guided me to the instructor who would teach me exactly what I need to know to save Kara's life. She needed us both to be broken so we could understand what it means to be healed." The first fat raindrops began to fall, but neither of them moved toward shelter. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" Lirael's voice finally cracked, and the pain Charles had caused her poured out like blood from a wound. "Do you understand what it felt like to be dismissed like I was nothing after Elena herself chose me? After she appeared to me in dreams for years, preparing me to love your children?" "Years?" Charles whispered. "Since I was 25, Lirael confirmed. A beautiful woman with kind eyes visiting me in my sleep, showing me 2 little girls who needed a mother. Teaching me Spanish lullabies I'd never heard before, showing me how to cut toast into star shapes, preparing me to love children I hadn't even met yet." Thunder crashed overhead, and suddenly Charles understood the magnitude of Elena's plan. "She didn't just choose you," he said with growing wonder. "She's been preparing you, training you, molding you into exactly what we needed." "And she prepared me for this moment too," Lirael said, stepping closer as the rain began to fall harder. "She told me you would hurt me because you were terrified of loving someone new. She told me you would send me away because you couldn't handle how perfectly I fit into your lives. She told me that when you came back to me, you would be broken and beautiful and finally ready to surrender." Charles felt something fundamental shift inside his chest, not breaking, but opening. "I am broken," he admitted, the words Elena had written flowing from him like prophecy. "But I want to be whole. I'm scared, but I want to be brave. I'm lost, but I want to come home." Lirael's breath caught. "Those are the exact words Elena told me you would say. because she wrote them in her journal, because she planned this entire conversation. Charles pulled out Elena's journal, its pages now damp with rain. She even knew about the storm. She knew we would stand here in the rain while her daughter's life hung in the balance, finally understanding that some love is worth fighting for. The rain was falling in earnest now, plastering their clothes to their bodies and turning the world into a hazy blur of water and emotion. But neither of them cared about getting wet. "She also told me what would happen next," Lirael said softly, stepping so close he could feel the warmth of her body despite the cool rain. "What?" "That you would kiss me in the storm, that it would be desperate and passionate and full of 3 years of loneliness finally finding its home, that it would be the kiss that seals our destiny and calls Kara's spirit back from whatever edge she's walking." Charles cupped her face in his hands, rain streaming down both their faces like tears of joy and sorrow combined. "And after I kiss you, after you kiss me, we run to save our daughter, because that's what Elena's plan was always leading to, not just bringing us together, but making us strong enough to fight for the family she entrusted to our care." "Our daughter," Charles repeated, testing the words. "Our daughter," Lirael confirmed. "Elena told me Kara would call me Mommy for the first time right after I save her life. She told me that's when you'll finally understand that love doesn't replace what was lost. It honors it." Instead of answering with words, Charles kissed her, deep and desperate and full of 3 years of grief and guilt and stubborn pride finally surrendering to grace. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, the storm around them seemed to calm, as if Elena's spirit was sighing with satisfaction. "There's something else," Lirael whispered against his lips. "Something Elena made me promise to tell you." "What?" "She's not angry that you loved her memory more than you loved your life. She's proud that you loved her enough to grieve." "But Charles," Lirael's eyes filled with tears, "she's been waiting 3 years for you to understand that grief is love with nowhere to go. And now you have somewhere to put it." Charles felt the last of his resistance crumble. "I love you," he said, the words torn from his very soul. "I've been fighting it for months because I thought loving you meant betraying her memory. But Elena brought you to us. Elena chose you. Loving you honors her, doesn't it?" "Yes," Lirael whispered. "That's exactly what it does." Thunder crashed overhead one final time, and then the storm began to move away, leaving them standing in the gentle rain like two people baptized by heaven itself. "We have 17 minutes, Lirael said, checking the watch Elena had told her to buy, a watch that would help her time Kara's CPR perfectly. "Then let's go save our daughter," Charles said, taking her hand. As they ran toward his car, Charles felt Elena's presence one more time, a warm brush against his consciousness that felt like a kiss on the forehead, like a mother's blessing, like a wife's final gift of love. And he knew with absolute certainty that Elena Richardson LaPlante was smiling, because some love stories are written in heaven before they ever begin on earth, and some angels keep their promises across eternity itself. But most importantly, some wives love their husbands enough to find them the perfect woman to love when they're gone, even if it means orchestrating heartbreak first, teaching them that some gifts can only be received by broken hearts that have finally learned to heal. Chapter 5. When Angels Weep. The sound that shattered Charles's world wasn't thunder or breaking glass. It was the moment his 7-year-old daughter's breathing simply stopped, followed by a silence so complete it felt like death itself had entered the room and claimed what he loved most. "Kara!" Lirael's scream pierced the air as she dropped to her knees beside the child's motionless form on the kitchen floor. They had just walked through the front door, rain-soaked and hopeful, ready to rebuild their family, when they'd found Deliverance desperately trying to coax the twins into eating something, anything, for the 6th day running. But this was different. This was worse than Charles had imagined possible. Kara wasn't just unconscious. She wasn't breathing. No pulse, Lirel whispered, her fingers pressed against Kara's throat, her own face draining of color. Charles, call 911 now. She's not breathing. The world tilted sideways. Charles felt his knees buckle as he stared down at his daughter's blue-tinged lips, her chest terrifyingly still. For a moment he was paralyzed, not by fear, but by a crushing wave of memory. Elena in the hospital bed, her breathing growing shallower, the monitors falling silent. "Charles!" Lirel's voice cut through his PTSD flashback like a blade. "The phone!" Now! His hands shook so violently he could barely dial as Lirel tilted Kara's head back and began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. One breath, two breaths, then chest compressions, her small hands pressing on an even smaller chest. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter, she's not breathing, 7 years old. The words tumbled out in a panic, barely coherent. Sir, is someone performing CPR? Charles looked at Lirel, who was breathing life back into his daughter with the focused intensity of someone who'd been trained for this moment. Yes, yes, my fiancée. She knows what to do. Keep her going. Paramedics are 3 minutes out. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Deliverance had gathered a sobbing Oona into her arms, shielding the little girl from the sight of her twin sister fighting for her life. Charles stood frozen, watching the woman he loved, literally breathing life back into his child. Come on, baby girl, Lirel whispered between compressions. Come back to us. Your daddy needs you. Oona needs you. I need you. On the 15th compression, Kara's eyes fluttered. On the 20th, she gasped, a horrible, ragged sound that was the most beautiful thing Charles had ever heard. There she is, Lirel sobbed, gathering the child against her chest as Kara began to cry weakly. There's my brave girl. The paramedics burst through the door just as Kara whispered, Miss Lirel. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm never leaving you again. In the ambulance, as they raced toward Miami Children's Hospital, Charles finally spoke. You saved her life. Anyone would have... No. His voice was rough with emotion and something deeper, a truth he'd been avoiding for months. You saved her life because you love her, because you've been more of a mother to her than... He couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Sarah Martinez met them at the hospital with a team of specialists. Kara was immediately taken into intensive care, her small body hooked up to monitors and IVs. Mr. LaPlante, Dr. Martinez said quietly, your daughter went into cardiac arrest due to severe malnutrition and electrolyte imbalance. If your fiancée hadn't performed CPR when she did, she didn't need to finish. Charles felt something inside him shatter completely. Not just crack, shatter. He'd almost lost Kara, really lost her, forever. This is my fault, he whispered, sinking into the hallway chair. Elena died, and I couldn't protect her. I couldn't save her. And now I almost killed our daughter because I was too proud, too broken, too... Charles. Lirel knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. Look at me. When he finally met her eyes, she saw the depth of his trauma for the first time. This wasn't just grief. This was survivor's guilt, PTSD, the crushing weight of a man who blamed himself for every loss. Elena's death wasn't your fault, she said firmly. And Kara is alive. She's going to be okay. But Charles, you need help. Real help. You can't carry this alone anymore. Before he could respond, rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway. Margaret Richardson appeared, still in her black dress, her face white with panic. Where is she? Where's Kara? She spotted Charles, and her expression shifted to fury. You said they were fine, you said. She stopped when she saw Lirel. You, Margaret said, her voice barely controlled. You're here. Yes, Lirael said simply, standing to face Elena's mother. I'm here. Good, Margaret said, and her voice cracked. Good. Because ... She took a shuddering breath. Because Elena asked me to make sure you would be... The words hung in the air like a bombshell. Charles looked up sharply. What did you say? Margaret's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as she reached into her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. She wrote this a week before she died, Margaret whispered. Made me promise to find the right woman for her girls. Made me promise to help that woman, even if it meant going against my own prejudices. She held out the envelope to Lirael with trembling hands. She described you perfectly. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to love children who weren't your own. She said you'd have a musical voice and that you'd make the girls laugh again. Lirael took the envelope with shaking hands. Her name was written on it in Elena's handwriting. She knew? Charles whispered. She didn't know you specifically, Margaret said to Lirael, but she knew someone like you would come. Someone who would love her girls the way they deserved to be loved. Someone who would... She looked at Charles. Someone who would save him too. Margaret turned back to Lirael, her voice breaking. I've been fighting this because I was afraid. Afraid of losing Elena completely. Afraid of change. Afraid that loving you meant forgetting her. But watching you save Kara's life tonight, she sobbed openly. Elena would be so proud of you. So grateful. Charles stood slowly, his legs unsteady. Margaret, No. She held up a hand. I owe you both an apology. Especially you, she said to Lirael. I've been cruel and prejudiced and wrong. You're not taking Elena's place. You're honoring it. Through the window of Kara's room, they could see the little girl sleeping peacefully, color returning to her cheeks. Owona sat beside her sister's bed, holding her hand. She's going to be okay, Dr. Martinez announced, joining them in the hallway. The CPR prevented any brain damage. Her heart rhythm is stable. She'll need to stay for observation, but she's going to make a full recovery. As if summoned by the good news, Kara's eyes opened. She looked around the room until she found Lirael's face. Mommy Lirael, she whispered, the words so soft they were barely audible. It was the first time she'd called her that. Lirael's heart broke and healed simultaneously. I'm here, baby girl. I was scared, but I heard you singing to me. I'll always sing to you. Always. Margaret watched this exchange with tears streaming down her face. May I read Elena's letter with you? Together, the three adults opened the envelope. Elena's handwriting was shaky but clear. To the woman who will love my daughters, if you're reading this, it means God has sent you to my family when they needed you most. I don't know your name or where you come from, but I know your heart. You're the one who will teach them to laugh again, who will hold them when they cry, who will love them not because you have to, but because you choose to. To Charles, let her love you too. You deserve happiness, my darling. You deserve a partner who sees your worth and celebrates it every day. Don't let pride or fear keep you from the love that could heal your broken heart. And to you, my unknown sister, thank you. Thank you for loving what I had to leave behind. Thank you for being strong enough to fight for them when the world tells you that you don't belong. You do belong. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. All my love and gratitude, Elena. By the time they finished reading, all three were crying. Margaret reached out tentatively and took Lirael's hand. Welcome to the family, she whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. As dawn broke over Miami, Charles watched his daughters sleeping peacefully, Kara in her hospital bed, Owona curled up in the chair beside her. Lirael dozed in the corner, exhausted from the night's trauma but refusing to leave. Margaret had stayed too, knitting quietly in the chair by the window. For the first time in 3 years, Charles felt complete. His family was whole again, not the same as it had been before Elena's death, but something new and beautiful and blessed by the woman he'd lost. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Hawthorne and Aurelius. She saved Kara's life. Elena's letter says it all. We're home. The response came immediately from Hawthorne. About damn time. Now get some therapy and don't screw this up again. From Aurelius. Welcome back to the land of the living, brother. Elena would be proud. Charles smiled through his tears and put his phone away. Tomorrow he would start therapy. Tomorrow he would begin healing from the PTSD that had haunted him for years. Tomorrow he would start building the life Elena had wanted for all of them. But tonight, he would simply watch over his sleeping angels and count his blessings. His family was safe. His family was whole. His family was forever. And Elena was still with them in every laugh, every hug, every moment of love they shared. Chapter 6. Healing What Was Broken. The La Plante mansion had never felt more alive than it did on the afternoon they brought Kara back from the hospital. Golden sunlight streaming through the windows, and the sound of children's laughter echoing through rooms that had been silent for far too long. But it was the presence none of them could see that made everything feel truly magical. Elena was there. Charles felt her in the way the jasmine bloomed impossibly bright in the garden, in the way Kara's favorite butterfly landed on her shoulder the moment they walked through the front door, in the way Lirael hummed a Spanish lullaby she claimed not to remember learning. Elena's spirit moved through their lives like a gentle breeze, orchestrating moments of healing with the same supernatural precision that had brought them all together. "Higher, Miss Lirael, push me higher," Kara squealed from the swing set in the backyard, her cheeks flushed with health and happiness, no trace of the child who had died and been brought back to life just 4 days earlier. The doctors had called her recovery miraculous. But Charles knew better. This wasn't medicine. This was love transcending death itself. "Any higher and you'll fly away like an angel," Lirael laughed, giving the swing another gentle push. "And then what would I tell your daddy? That I lost his daughter to heaven. Tell him I went to visit Mama," Kara called back, and the innocent comment made everyone freeze, because today, for the first time, she said it without sadness, as if visiting Mama was as natural as visiting next door. From his position on the terrace, Charles watched the scene with wonder so overwhelming it sometimes stole his breath. 4 days ago, he'd nearly lost everything through his own stupidity and pride. Now, watching Lirael play with his daughters in the golden afternoon light, while Elena's presence blessed every moment, he felt like the most fortunate man who had ever lived. "You can see her too, can't you?" Deliverance observed quietly, settling into the chair beside him. His sister had extended her stay indefinitely, claiming she needed to document the miracle for posterity, but Charles suspected she was really there to witness Elena's plan reach its completion. Sometimes, Charles admitted, accepting the glass of iced tea she offered. "Mostly I feel her, like she's conducting some beautiful symphony that only she can hear." "The girls see her constantly," Deliverance said softly. "Owona told me Elena braids her hair while she sleeps. Kara says Mama sits with her during bath time, teaching her new songs to sing to Lirael." Before Charles could respond, Owona came running up from the garden, her arms full of white roses that had bloomed out of season, Elena's favorite flowers, appearing exactly when they were needed most. "Aunt Deli, Mama told me to pick these for Miss Lirael," she announced breathlessly. "She said today is a special day and Miss Lirael needs to look like a princess." Deliverance's eyebrows rose meaningfully. "A special day? Did Mama say why?" "Because Daddy's going to ask her the magic question." Kara had appeared at the terrace door, having abandoned her swing to join the conversation. "Mama showed us in a dream. She said Miss Lirael has been waiting her whole life for someone to love her enough to promise forever." Charles felt his heart stop. Elena had told them about the proposal, but he hadn't even fully decided yet. She also said, Owona continued with 7-year-old solemnity, that you already bought the ring 3 weeks ago and you've been carrying it around in your pocket like a scared little boy. Charles's hand automatically went to his jacket pocket, where Elena's engagement ring, the one he'd had redesigned with Lirael's birthstone, had been living for exactly 3 weeks. Deliverance laughed delightedly. Elena's still managing your love life from beyond the grave. I have to admire her thoroughness. Girls, Charles said carefully, what exactly did Mama tell you about today? Both twins exchanged a look that was far too knowing for their age. She said you're going to take Miss Lirael to the place where you first felt your heart wake up, Kara said dreamily. She said you're going to tell her about the dreams where she appears as your guardian angel. She said you're going to cry happy tears, and so will Miss Lirael. And then, Owona added with satisfaction, she said Miss Lirael is going to say yes and will finally be a real family again, the kind Mama always wanted us to have. Charles looked toward the garden where Lirael was now teaching both girls to weave flower crowns, her face radiant with the kind of joy he'd only dreamed of seeing. Elena's presence seemed strongest around her, as if his wife's spirit was constantly whispering encouragement and guidance. Where did Elena say I should take her? Charles asked his daughters, knowing with absolute certainty that they would have the answer. The place where you and Mama got engaged, Kara said simply. She said Miss Lirael needs to know she's not replacing anyone. She's completing something that was always meant to have 3 hearts instead of 2. Charles felt tears prick his eyes. Elena had gotten engaged to him in the conservatory at Vizcaya, the same conservatory where she'd made him promise to find love again before she died. She also said, Owona added quietly, that she'll be there with you, that when you put the ring on Miss Lirael's finger, you'll feel Mama's hands blessing yours. As if summoned by their conversation, Lirael appeared at the edge of the terrace, flower petals in her hair and pure joy radiating from her face. The girls want to have a tea party in the garden, she announced, setting down her basket of flowers. Something about celebrating special days and new beginnings. Charles stood up, his hand closing around the ring box in his pocket. Actually, I was hoping you might come somewhere with me first. Something in his voice made her look at him more closely. Where? Vizcaya. There's something I need to show you, something Elena wanted you to see. Lirael's breath caught. Elena wanted me to see something? She left instructions, Deliverance said with a meaningful smile. Very specific instructions about timing and location and, well, you'll see. An hour later, Charles and Lirael walked hand in hand through the magnificent gardens of Vizcaya, the afternoon sun casting everything in golden light that seemed almost supernatural. Charles felt Elena's presence more strongly with every step, as if she was walking beside them, guiding them toward their destiny. This place is magical, Lirael whispered, pausing to admire a fountain that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. Elena always said it was where earth touches heaven, Charles replied. She said the boundary between worlds is thinner here. They reached the conservatory just as the sun began to set, painting the glass walls in shades of rose and gold. Charles led Lirael to the exact spot where he'd proposed to Elena 15 years earlier, a small alcove surrounded by blooming gardenias and jasmine. This is where I asked Elena to marry me, he said quietly, and this is where she made me promise to find love again after she was gone. Lirael's eyes filled with tears. She knew, even then. She knew everything. Charles pulled Elena's journal from his jacket and opened to a page marked with a white ribbon. She wrote this entry the day after our engagement. Today, Charles gave me his heart in the conservatory at Vizcaya. Someday, when I'm gone, he'll bring another woman to this same spot. Her name will start with an L, and she'll have eyes that see straight to the soul. When he proposes to her here, I'll be watching from heaven, so proud that he finally understands love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies. Lirael was crying openly now. She saw all of this, every moment. Charles closed the journal and took her hands in his. But Lirael, I need you to understand something. I'm not proposing to you here because Elena told me to. I'm proposing to you here because this is where I learned what forever means, and I want to promise you forever. As if responding to his words, the air around them seemed to shimmer, and for just a moment Lirael could swear she saw Elena standing behind Charles, her hands resting on his shoulders in blessing. Elena brought us together, Charles continued, his voice rough with emotion. But what happens next is our choice, our love, our forever. He dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring box that had been burning a hole in his pocket for weeks. When he opened it, the ring caught the last rays of sunlight and seemed to glow with inner fire. Lirael, he said, his voice breaking, you came into my life like an angel sent to save us all. You love my daughters like they're your own. You've taught me how to live again, how to hope again, how to believe in miracles again. In the air around them, jasmine petals began to fall like snow, though there was no wind to stir them. Will you marry me? Charles asked. Will you be my wife, my partner, my heart? Will you help me raise Elena's daughters and maybe give them brothers and sisters? Will you let me love you for the rest of my life and beyond? Through her tears, Lirael saw Elena more clearly now, radiant and smiling, her hands pressed to her heart in joy. When Elena spoke, only Lirael could hear her. Thank you for loving them better than I ever could have hoped. Thank you for being brave enough to catch what I had to let fall. Yes, Lirael whispered, and the words seemed to echo through dimensions. Yes, Charles. Yes to all of it. Yes to forever. As Charles slipped the ring onto her finger, they both felt it, Elena's hands covering theirs, warm and real and full of blessing. The air around them sparkled with something that might have been magic, or might have been love, or might have been the same thing. She's here, Lirael whispered. I know, Charles said, standing to kiss her as jasmine petals continued to fall around them, like benediction from heaven itself. When they finally broke apart, the conservatory was filled with the scent of Elena's favorite perfume, and both of them knew without a doubt that their love had been blessed by the woman who had orchestrated it all. Come on, Charles said, taking Lirael's hand and admiring the way Elena's ring sparkled on her finger. Let's go home and tell our daughters that Elena's plan worked. As they walked back through the gardens of Vizcaya, Elena's spirit smiled from whatever realm love inhabits beyond death, knowing that some promises are kept across eternity itself. Her family was complete. Her plan was fulfilled. Her love would live on in every laugh, every hug, every moment of joy they would share together. And in the conservatory behind them, white roses bloomed out of season, filling the air with the scent of heaven and the promise of happily ever after. Chapter 7. Dancing in the Fire. The morning of the twins' 8th birthday party arrived like a symphony of orchestrated magic, with caterers rushing through the mansion, florists arranging elaborate bouquets that seemed to bloom brighter in Lirael's presence, and two very excited little girls bouncing off the walls with anticipation. But nothing could have prepared anyone for the supernatural storm that would bless everything before the day was through. Elena was everywhere. She was in the butterflies that appeared in impossible numbers, landing on the birthday cake as if drawn by invisible hands. She was in the way the weather cleared from threatening clouds to perfect sunshine the moment Lirael stepped outside. She was in the white roses that kept multiplying in the garden, as if Elena herself was arranging the perfect backdrop for her daughter's special day. "Miss Lyrell, Miss Lyrell." Owona burst into the kitchen where Lyrell was directing the cake decorating, her face flushed with excitement, and her princess dress somehow staying pristine despite her bouncing energy. "The ponies know my name. They came right to me like Mama promised they would." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Lyrell laughed, catching Owona before she could barrel into the caterers carrying delicate fondant decorations. "Your mama always did have a way with animals. She told them to be extra gentle today because it's our special day," Kara added, appearing in the doorway with her identical princess dress perfectly arranged. "She said today is the day our family becomes official in heaven's eyes." From across the kitchen, Charles watched this exchange with that familiar warmth spreading through his chest. 3 weeks had passed since their engagement, and Elena's presence had only grown stronger. She was orchestrating their happiness with the same supernatural precision that had brought them together, making sure every detail was perfect for what she knew would be a day of both celebration and reckoning. "Daddy," both girls called in unison. "When are Uncle Hawthorne and Uncle Aurelius arriving?" "Mama said they're bringing the special surprise." "They'll be here soon, princesses," Charles assured them. But his attention was caught by the sight of multiple cars pulling up the circular driveway. Some he recognized, friends, neighbors, parents from the twins' school. But one sleek black sedan made his stomach tighten with apprehension. Margaret Richardson had arrived, but before Charles could worry about potential conflict, Kara tugged on his sleeve with excitement that was impossible to ignore. "Daddy, look!" She pointed to where hundreds of butterflies had suddenly appeared in the garden, creating a living tapestry of orange and gold that took his breath away. "Mama sent them. She said butterflies are angels' messengers, and they're here to tell everyone that love is magic." Indeed, the butterflies seemed to be putting on a show. They danced in perfect spirals around the party decorations, landed on the birthday cake in formations that looked almost like letters, and followed Lyrell wherever she went, as if she were their queen. Margaret Richardson emerged from her car and stopped dead at the sight of the supernatural butterfly display. For a moment, her carefully composed mask slipped, and Charles saw wonder replace her usual disapproval. "Charles," she said quietly as she approached the terrace where he stood, watching the party preparations. "I need to speak with you about Elena, about recent discoveries." Before Charles could respond, both twins had spotted their grandmother and rushed to embrace her with the uncomplicated love of children. "Grandmother, you came!" Owona exclaimed. "Did you see the butterflies? Mama sent them just for us." "And wait until you meet Miss Lyrell," Kara added with shining eyes. "She's going to be our new mommy, but Mama chose her special, so it's okay." Margaret's composure cracked completely. Instead of her usual stiffness, she knelt down to embrace both girls with tears in her eyes. "Your Mama chose her," she whispered. "Oh, yes," Owona said matter-of-factly. "Mama told us all about her plan, how she had to find someone brave enough to love Daddy even when he's being stubborn, and strong enough to love us even though we miss Mama sometimes." "She said Miss Lyrell was the answer to her prayers," Kara added. "The angel she asked God to send to take care of us when she couldn't anymore." Margaret stood slowly, her eyes finding Charles with an expression he'd never seen before. Not disapproval or coldness, but something that looked almost like awe. "I found more letters," she said quietly, "hidden in Elena's music box. Letters addressed to me, explaining everything. Charles, she planned this party too. She described the butterflies, the perfect weather, even the conversation we're having right now." She reached into her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope with Charles's name written in Elena's familiar handwriting. "She asked me to give this to you today, at exactly this moment, when I was finally ready to see the miracle she'd orchestrated. Charles took the letter with trembling hands, but before he could open it, a commotion from the garden caught their attention. The party guests had all stopped their conversations to stare in wonder at what was happening around Lirelle. She stood in the center of the garden, surrounded by a living cloud of butterflies that danced around her like she was the center of their universe. Children and adults alike watched in amazement as the butterflies formed patterns in the air. First a heart, then what looked like the word love, then a perfect spiral that lifted toward the sky like a prayer made visible. "It's like something out of a fairy tale," one of the mothers whispered. "It's like she's been blessed by angels," another replied. Margaret watched this supernatural display with tears streaming down her face. Elena always said she would find a way to show her approval from heaven. I just never imagined it would be so beautiful. Charles opened Elena's letter, his heart pounding as he read her familiar handwriting. "My darling Charles, if you're reading this at Oona and Kara's 8th birthday party, then everything has gone according to plan. Margaret has finally seen the miracle for what it is, and Lirael is standing in our garden, surrounded by heaven's messengers. The butterflies are my gift to her and to you. They're proof that love transcends death, that some promises are kept across eternity itself, that the boundary between worlds dissolves when hearts are pure enough to see truth. Today, our family becomes complete, not because I'm being replaced, but because I'm being honored by the woman I chose to continue my love story. Watch the butterflies, my darling. They're spelling out my final message, the one I've been trying to send you since the day I died." Charles looked up from the letter just as the butterflies began to form letters in the air above Lirael's head. Slowly, clearly, they spelled out words that made everyone in the garden gasp with wonder. "Thank you for loving them." And then, as if responding to some celestial conductor, the butterflies began to sing, not with voices, but with the gentle harmony of their wings, creating music that sounded almost like Elena's favorite lullaby. Lirael looked directly at Charles across the garden, tears streaming down her face as she understood the magnitude of what was happening. Elena wasn't just blessing their love. She was announcing it to the world, making sure everyone present understood that this union had heaven's approval. Margaret walked to Lirael with shaking steps, the hostility and prejudice of months melting away in the face of undeniable miracle. "I'm sorry," she whispered, taking Lirael's hands in hers as butterflies continued to dance around them both. "I fought against Elena's plan because I was afraid of losing her completely. But watching this, seeing how the very heavens celebrate your presence in our family, I understand now." She looked into Lirael's eyes with genuine warmth for the first time. "You're not taking Elena's place. You're fulfilling it. You're the answer to every prayer she ever whispered for her children's future. And I promise you," Margaret continued, her voice breaking with emotion, "I will spend the rest of my life supporting the love that Elena died to orchestrate." The butterflies began to settle then, covering every surface of the garden like living flowers. Children laughed with delight as the magical creatures landed on their hands and hair. Adults stood in wonder, many wiping away tears as they witnessed something that could only be described as a miracle. Charles made his way to Lirael through the crowd of amazed guests, Elena's letter still clutched in his hand. "She's here," Lirael whispered as he reached her. "I can feel her everywhere." "I know," Charles said, looking around at the supernatural beauty Elena had created for this moment. She wanted everyone to see. She wanted there to be no doubt that our love has heaven's blessing. As if responding to his words, a single white butterfly, larger and more radiant than all the others, landed on Lirael's shoulder. When it spread its wings, the pattern looked exactly like Elena's face, beautiful and smiling and full of joy. "Hello, Elena," Lirael whispered to the butterfly. "Thank you for trusting me with your precious family." The butterfly stayed for a long moment, as if listening, then lifted off and flew in a perfect circle around Charles and Lirael before disappearing into the golden afternoon light. The party that followed was pure magic. Children played with butterflies that seemed eager to be their companions. Adults shared stories of love and loss and hope reborn. The twins held court like the little princesses they were, explaining to anyone who would listen that their mama had planned everything from heaven. As the sun began to set and the last guests departed, the garden still sparkled with butterflies that showed no inclination to leave. Margaret lingered on the terrace, watching her granddaughters chase fireflies that had joined the supernatural celebration. "I have something else for you," she told Charles and Lirael. "Elena's final gift." She handed them a small velvet box that contained 2 matching necklaces, delicate chains holding pendants shaped like butterflies, each one set with a stone that seemed to glow with inner light. "She designed them herself," Margaret explained, "one for each of you. She said they would help you remember that love never dies, it just transforms into something even more beautiful." As Charles fastened the necklace around Lirael's throat, they both felt it. Elena's presence, warm and loving and eternally grateful. That night, long after the twins had been bathed and read to and tucked into beds still covered with butterfly visitors, Charles and Lirael stood on their terrace watching the last of the magical creatures dance in the moonlight. "Do you think she'll always be with us like this?" Lirael asked, leaning against Charles's chest as butterflies continued to spiral around the garden like living stars. "I think Elena's love has become part of the very fabric of our lives," Charles replied, his arms tightening around the woman who had completed his family. "I think every moment of joy we share, every laugh from our daughters, every kiss we exchange, it's all part of her continuing love story." A butterfly landed on Lirael's hand, its wings pulsing with gentle light that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "Thank you, Elena," she whispered to the night sky, "for choosing me, for trusting me, for showing me that some fairy tales are real. And somewhere in the realm where love transcends death, Elena Richardson LaPlante smiled, knowing that her greatest work was complete. Her daughters would grow up surrounded by love. Her husband had found happiness again. Her chosen successor would guard her family with the fierce devotion of a mother's heart. The butterflies would remain as long as they were needed, proof that miracles are real, that love never dies, and that some angels keep their promises across eternity itself. Chapter 8. Love's Sweet Rebellion. The whispers started the moment Charles and Lirael walked into the Coral Gables Country Club, hand in hand, for what was supposed to be a celebration of the new children's wing at Miami General Hospital, but quickly became the social event where Miami's elite showed their true colors. "Is that really Charles LaPlante with his caregiver?" The voice belonged to Victoria Ashford, wife of a prominent banker, and though she spoke quietly, her words carried across the marble foyer like shards of broken glass. How absolutely unconventional. Lirael felt Charles's hand tighten around hers, his jaw tensing in that familiar way that meant he was fighting to control his temper. She squeezed his fingers gently, reminding him without words that they'd known this would be difficult. Being in love in the privacy of his mansion was one thing. Presenting themselves as a couple to Miami's social elite was quite another. "Smile," she murmured, her voice steady despite the anxiety coiling in her stomach. "We're here for the hospital, remember?" "For the children." Charles looked down at her, his gray eyes softening as they always did when he looked at her. She was magnificent tonight in a simple but elegant black dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her natural beauty outshining every overjeweled socialite in the room. "You're right. And you're perfect. Mr. LaPlante, a booming voice interrupted their moment as Harold Whitmore, one of Charles's biggest business rivals, approached with his wife Constance in tow. How wonderful to see you here, and this must be— His eyes raked over Lirael with barely concealed disdain. Your date for the evening? My fiancée, Charles corrected firmly, his arm sliding possessively around Lirael's waist. Harold, Constance, I'd like you to meet Lirael. Lirael, the Whitmores. Constance Whitmore's smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. How lovely. And what do you do, dear? Besides, well, she gestured vaguely, leaving the implication hanging in the air. I was a child development specialist before I came to work for Charles, Lirael replied calmly, though her cheeks burned with humiliation. Currently, I'm focused on raising his daughters and supporting various children's charities. How admirable, Harold said with false heartiness. Charles always did like his charitable projects. The word projects hit Lirael like a slap. She felt Charles go rigid beside her, his hand flexing as if he wanted to form a fist. If you'll excuse us, Charles said through gritted teeth, I see someone I need to speak with. He guided Lirael away before either of them could say something they'd regret, but the damage was done. As they moved through the crowd, similar conversations followed in their wake, polite on the surface but venomous underneath. The LaPlante name used to mean something in this city, Lirael overheard Patricia Worthington telling a group of women by the bar. Elena must be rolling in her grave. I heard she was the caregiver, another voice chimed in. You know what they say about the help getting ideas above their station? Each comment was another knife thrust, carefully aimed and precisely delivered. Lirael had known this would be difficult, but she hadn't been prepared for the casual cruelty of people who smiled to her face while sharpening their knives behind her back. I need some air, she whispered to Charles as they paused near the terrace doors. I'll come with you. No, stay, work the room. I'll be fine. Before he could protest, she slipped outside onto the moonlit terrace, grateful for the warm Miami night and the momentary escape from the suffocating atmosphere inside. She gripped the marble railing and tried to calm her racing heart, reminding herself of why she was doing this. The children, Charles, their future together. Having second thoughts. The voice behind her was cultured and smooth, belonging to a man she didn't recognize. He was handsome in a cold way, with silver hair and calculating blue eyes that reminded her unpleasantly of a shark. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Richard Blackwood, he said, extending a manicured hand. I'm an old friend of the family. Elena's family, that is. The way he said Elena's name was loaded with meaning. I couldn't help but notice you seem overwhelmed by all this. I'm fine, thank you. Are you? He moved closer, and Lirael fought the urge to step back. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman who's just realized she's in over her head. What do you want, Mr. Blackwood? His smile was predatory. I want to help you. You seem like a lovely young woman, but this— He gestured toward the party inside. This isn't your world, is it? These people will never accept you. They'll smile to your face and tear you apart behind your back for the rest of your life. His words hit too close to home, echoing her own fears with surgical precision. Charles loves you now, Blackwood continued, his voice deceptively gentle. But love fades. And when it does, when the novelty wears off and he remembers what he could have had with someone from his own world, where will that leave you? That's enough. Charles's voice cut through the night air like a blade. He materialized beside Lirael, his face a mask of cold fury. Blackwood, I should have known you'd slither out from whatever rock you've been hiding under. Charles, good to see you too. Blackwood's smile never wavered. I was just having a delightful conversation with your companion, my fiancé, and if you're done spreading poison, I think it's time for you to leave." "Oh, I'm just leaving anyway. Early morning tomorrow. Some business opportunities that require my attention." His eyes flicked to Lyrel with mock sympathy. "Think about what I said, my dear. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for the people we love is let them go." As Blackwood disappeared back into the party, Charles turned to Lyrel with concern etched across his features. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing I haven't been thinking myself," she admitted quietly. Lyrel, "He's right, Charles. This isn't my world. I don't belong here, and everyone knows it." Her voice was steady, but he could see the pain in her dark eyes. "Maybe it would be better if—" "No." The word came out with such force that she startled. "No, I won't let you do this. I won't let them make you believe you're not good enough." "But what if they're right? What if I am just holding you back from the life you should have?" Charles cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize had fallen. "You are my life. You and the girls. You're everything that matters to me. I don't give a damn what these people think. But your business, your reputation, mean nothing without you." His voice was fierce, desperate. "Lirael, listen to me. I spent 3 years living like a ghost, going through the motions of existence without really being alive. You brought me back to life. You brought my daughters back to life. If society has a problem with that, then society can go to hell." Before she could respond, the terrace doors opened and Hawthorne Sterling emerged, his expression grim. "Charles, we need to talk. Now." Something in his tone made both Charles and Lirael go cold. "What is it?" "Blackwood's been busy. He's been spreading rumors all evening. About Lirael's background, about your judgment, about the stability of your business." Hawthorne's jaw was tight with anger. "He's also been talking to some of your biggest investors. 3 of them have already called me tonight to express concerns about your recent personal choices." The words hit Lirael like a physical blow. "He's trying to destroy your business because of me." "He's trying to destroy my business because he's a jealous bastard who never got over losing a deal to me 10 years ago," Charles corrected fiercely. "This has nothing to do with you and everything to do with him finding a weakness to exploit." "But I am a weakness, aren't I?" Lirael's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm the thing he can use against you." "Lirael, don't—" "I should go." She was already moving toward the terrace doors, her decision crystallizing with painful clarity. "I should leave before this gets any worse." "Like hell." Charles caught her arm gently but firmly. "We're not running away. We're not giving him what he wants." "Charles, be reasonable," Hawthorne interjected. "If you lose those investors, then I'll find new ones. I'll rebuild from scratch if I have to." Charles's voice was absolute, unyielding. "But I won't sacrifice the woman I love to save my business." The conviction in his voice, the unwavering certainty in his eyes, made Lirael's breath catch. "You could lose everything." "I already lost everything once," he said quietly. "When Elena died, I lost my way, my purpose, my will to live. You gave all of that back to me. Money can be earned again, businesses can be rebuilt, but love like this is once in a lifetime." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stared at him, this incredible man who was willing to risk everything for her. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. Which is why we're going back in there, and we're going to show them exactly what we're made of." Hand in hand, they walked back into the party with their heads held high. The whispers followed them, but for the first time that evening, Lirael didn't care. Let them talk. Let them judge. She had something they would never understand. A love worth fighting for. As the evening wore on, she watched Charles work the room with renewed determination, introducing her proudly to everyone they met, never letting anyone treat her as anything less than his equal. And slowly she began to see what he saw, that the people who mattered, the ones worth knowing, judged them by their character rather than their circumstances. By the time they left the country club that night, Lirael felt something she'd never felt before in Charles's world. She felt like she belonged. Not because she'd changed, but because she'd finally stopped apologizing for who she was. And that, she realized, was worth fighting for. Chapter 9. The Heart's True Victory. The annual Miami Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the social event of the season, where Miami's most powerful and wealthy gathered to write checks and see who would claim the spotlight. But tonight, Charles Laplante was about to give them a show they would never forget. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Hawthorne asked for the third time as he adjusted Charles's black tie in the mansion's foyer. "Because once you do this, there's no taking it back. You'll have officially declared war on half of Miami's establishment." Charles checked his reflection one final time, his gray eyes steely with determination. "They declared war first when they made the woman I love feel unwelcome in her own city. I'm just choosing to fight back. And if it backfires, if you lose more investors, if the board tries to force you out of your own company, then I'll build something new." Charles's voice was calm, certain. "I spent 3 years being dead inside, Hawthorne. I won't go back to that life for anyone or anything." From the top of the marble staircase, Lirael appeared like a vision in midnight blue silk, the gown flowing around her like liquid starlight. Charles felt his breath catch, as it always did when he saw her, the same reaction he'd had the first day she'd walked into his house, though he'd been too stubborn and too blind to recognize it then. "You look incredible," he said, meeting her at the bottom of the stairs and offering his arm. "Are you sure about tonight?" she asked quietly, her dark eyes searching his face. "It's not too late to change your mind." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The ride to the Four Seasons was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Lirael stared out the window at the glittering Miami skyline, still hardly believing that in a few hours Charles would announce their engagement to the very people who had spent weeks whispering about their relationship behind closed doors. "Nervous?" Charles asked, reaching over to take her hand. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if they—" "Then we'll face it together." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "You and me against the world, remember?" The hotel ballroom was already packed when they arrived, the cream of Miami society gathered in their finest attire, champagne flowing like water, and conversation buzzing with the usual mix of business deals and social gossip. Charles felt the familiar hush fall over nearby conversations as he and Lirael made their entrance, but tonight he welcomed the attention. "Charles!" Margaret Richardson materialized in front of them like an avenging angel in black Chanel, her expression coldly furious. "I need to speak with you, privately." "Margaret." Charles's voice was carefully neutral as he acknowledged his former mother-in-law. "You look well. Don't you dare patronize me," she hissed, her composure cracking slightly. "I know what you're planning tonight. Richard Blackwood was kind enough to warn me about this spectacle you're about to make." "Did he now?" Charles's smile was dangerous. "How thoughtful of him." "This is madness, Charles. You're about to throw away everything Elena worked to build, everything your family name stands for, all for—" Her gaze flicked to Lirael with unconcealed disdain. "For her." "Elena is gone," Charles said quietly, but his voice carried the weight of absolute finality. "And I won't dishonor her memory by living the rest of my life as a shrine to the past. She would want me to be happy, Margaret. She would want Owona and Kara to have a mother who loves them." A mother? Margaret's laugh was bitter. That woman will never be their mother. She doesn't have the breeding, the education, the— She has their hearts, Charles interrupted, his voice rising slightly. She has mine, and that's all that matters. Before Margaret could respond, the sound of a microphone being tested echoed through the ballroom. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the pediatric attending who had treated Kara, was stepping up to the podium to begin the evening's program. "If you'll excuse us," Charles said coldly, offering his arm to Lirael, "we have a future to announce." They made their way through the crowd toward their table, where Hawthorne and Aurelius were already seated with their respective dates. Deliverance had flown in from New York, specifically for this evening, and she stood to embrace both Charles and Lirael as they approached. "Ready to change the world?" she asked, with a grin that reminded Charles of their childhood conspiracies. "Ready," he confirmed. Dr. Martinez spoke beautifully about the Children's Hospital and the difference that charitable donations made in the lives of young patients. Several other speakers followed, including prominent businessmen and society ladies who basked in the applause for their philanthropic efforts. Then it was Charles's turn. As he made his way to the podium, Charles could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Conversations quieted to a murmur, then stopped altogether as the crowd sensed that something significant was about to happen. "Good evening," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent acoustics. "Most of you know me as Charles LaPlante, CEO of LaPlante Industries, father to Owona and Kara, and widower of the late Elena Richardson LaPlante." A respectful silence settled over the crowd at the mention of Elena's name. "Tonight, I want to talk to you about love," Charles continued, his eyes finding Lirael's in the crowd. "About the different forms it takes and about what it means to fight for what matters most." A murmur of curiosity rippled through the audience. This wasn't the usual speech they'd expected. "3 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. In losing her, I also lost myself. I became a shadow of the man she'd married, the father my daughters deserved. I was drowning in grief and pride and fear, and I couldn't find my way back to the surface." His voice grew stronger, more passionate as he spoke. "Then a remarkable woman walked into my life. She didn't come seeking wealth or status or social position. She came seeking only the chance to care for 2 little girls who needed someone to see them, to love them, to help them heal." Charles paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "That woman taught my daughters to laugh again. She helped them through nightmares and homework and the 1,000 small struggles of growing up without their mother. She brought light back into a house that had been dark for too long." In the audience, Lirael felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to Charles speak. Around her, the crowd was completely silent, hanging on his every word. "But more than that," Charles continued, his voice growing tender, "she taught me how to live again, how to love again, how to be the man my daughters needed and the man I wanted to be." He looked directly at Lirael then, his love for her written clearly across his face for everyone to see. "That woman is Lirael, and she is the love of my life. Tonight I want to announce to all of you that she has agreed to become my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, conversation exploded throughout the ballroom, some shocked, some disapproving, some genuinely pleased. But Charles wasn't finished. "I know some of you have questions about this relationship," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Some of you have expressed concerns about the differences in our backgrounds, our circumstances, our social positions." His tone hardened slightly, becoming more forceful. "To those people, I say this. Lirael's worth isn't measured by her bank account or her pedigree or the schools she attended. It's measured by her character, her compassion, her strength, and her capacity to love." The crowd was silent again, some people looking uncomfortable as they recognized themselves in his words. She has faced prejudice and cruelty from people who should know better, simply because she dared to love me and my children across social lines they consider sacred. But she has faced it with grace and dignity that puts the rest of us to shame. Charles's voice grew passionate, commanding. I have spent my entire adult life being the man society expected me to be. I married the right woman from the right family. I built the right kind of business. I lived in the right neighborhood and associated with the right people. He paused, looking out over the sea of faces before him. And you know what? It nearly killed me. It certainly killed my capacity for joy, for spontaneity, for real, honest love. Some people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, recognizing themselves in his description. Lirael didn't save me because she was convenient or appropriate or socially acceptable, Charles continued. She saved me because she saw something in me worth saving. She fought for my daughters when I was too lost in my own pain to fight for them myself. She taught me that love isn't about meeting society's expectations. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be your best self. In the audience, Lirael was crying openly now, overwhelmed by the public declaration of love and the fierce protection in his voice. So to those of you who disapprove of my choice, Charles said, his voice rising, I say this. I don't need your approval. I don't need your acceptance. What I need is the woman who makes me whole, who makes my daughters happy, who makes our house a home. He looked directly at several people who had been particularly vocal in their criticism, his gaze unflinching. If that makes me unsuitable for your social circles, so be it. If it makes me unworthy of your business partnerships, I'll find new ones. If it makes me a pariah in your carefully constructed world of privilege and prejudice, then I'm proud to be cast out. The ballroom was completely silent now, hundreds of people holding their breath as Charles delivered his final words. But I will never apologize for loving the most remarkable woman I've ever known, or for building a life with someone who makes every day worth living. He stepped away from the microphone and walked directly to Lirael's table, the crowd parting before him like the Red Sea. When he reached her, he dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box that sparkled with a perfect solitaire diamond. Lirael, he said, his voice carrying in the utterly silent ballroom, will you marry me? Publicly, proudly, and to hell with anyone who doesn't like it. Through her tears, she managed to whisper, yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and as Charles stood to kiss her, the ballroom erupted. Some people applauded enthusiastically. Hawthorne and Aurelius were cheering loudly, and Deliverance was wiping away tears. Others sat in shocked silence. A few actually got up and left. But Charles and Lirael didn't care about any of that. They were lost in each other, in the promise of forever, in the knowledge that they had just publicly chosen love over convention, truth over comfort, and their own happiness over society's approval. As they finally broke apart, both breathing hard and grinning through their tears, Charles whispered in her ear, no more hiding, no more apologies. Just us, for the rest of our lives. Just us, she agreed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The battle lines had been drawn, but love had won the day. Chapter 10. Forever starts today. 6 months later, on a perfect Miami morning, when the sun painted everything golden and the ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and endless possibilities, Lirael Laplante stood before her mirror and realized that fairy tales could come true, even for women who had stopped believing in them long ago. Miss Lirael, you look like a real princess, Kara exclaimed from her perch on the bed, her flower girl dress a confection of ivory silk and delicate lace that matched the twins' barely contained excitement. Even prettier than Cinderella. Much prettier, Owona agreed solemnly, carefully carrying Lirael's bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. Daddy's going to cry when he sees you. He always cries when you look extra beautiful." Lirael laughed, the sound bubbling up from a place of pure joy she'd never known existed. "Your daddy does not cry." "He does too," Kara insisted. "We've seen him. He gets all sniffly when he thinks we're not looking, especially when you're singing to us or when you help us with our homework, or when you make his favorite chocolate chip cookies." In the 6 months since Charles's dramatic proposal at the charity gala, their lives had transformed completely. The social fallout had been swift and sometimes brutal. Several business associates had indeed severed ties, and certain circles of Miami society had closed their doors permanently. But for every relationship they'd lost, they'd gained two more with people who valued authenticity over artifice, love over lineage. Charles's business had not only survived but thrived beyond all expectations. New investors, attracted by his integrity and passion, had stepped forward to replace those who'd left. La Plante Industries had expanded into sustainable development and children's charitable foundations, projects that gave both Charles and Lirael a sense of purpose beyond profit. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Deliverance appeared in the doorway, elegant in her role as matron of honor, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "The car is here, and if we don't leave soon, your groom is going to wear a hole in the church floor from pacing." Lirael took one last look at herself in the full-length mirror. The wedding dress was perfect, simple, elegant, with a flowing skirt that moved like water and delicate beadwork that caught the light like captured starlight. But more than the dress, it was the glow of happiness on her face that made her beautiful. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the right people, about to begin exactly the right future. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The drive to the church was a blur of Miami scenery and nervous excitement. The twins chattered about their important duties as flower girls. Deliverance fussed with everyone's hair and makeup, and Lirael tried to calm her racing heart by focusing on what waited for her at the altar. Charles. Her Charles. The man who had chosen her over social convention, who had fought for their love against every obstacle, who had made her believe that she deserved happiness beyond her wildest dreams. St. Patrick's Cathedral was packed with everyone who mattered to them. Mahola sat in the front row, beaming with pride for her friend. Hawthorne and Aurelius, looking handsome in their matching groomsmen tuxedos, stood at the altar with Charles. Scattered throughout the pews were the faces of people who had become their chosen family, colleagues who respected Charles's business acumen, neighbors who adored the twins, fellow volunteers from the children's charities they supported together. Notably absent were Margaret Richardson and several members of Miami's old guard, but their absence felt like a blessing rather than a loss. This wedding was about love, not social obligation. As the organ began to play, Lirael felt her nerves settle into anticipation. The twins went first, scattering rose petals with the serious concentration of children given an important job. The congregation awed appropriately at their cuteness, and Lirael could hear Charles's delighted laughter even from the back of the church. Then Deliverance walked down the aisle, graceful and proud, taking her place at the altar. The music changed to the traditional wedding march, and every person in the church stood as the doors opened to reveal Lirael. She had chosen to walk alone, not because she didn't have people who loved her, but because this journey to Charles was one she wanted to make independently, as a strong woman choosing her own destiny rather than being given away like property. But the moment she saw Charles waiting for her at the altar, the rest of the church faded away. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but it was the expression on his face that stole her breath, wonder, love, and a joy so pure it brought tears to her eyes. As she walked down the aisle, their eyes locked and held, and she could see his lips form the words, "I love you." She mouthed them back, and his smile was radiant enough to power the entire city. "Dearly beloved," Father Martinez began when she reached the altar, and Charles took her hands in his. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Charles and Lirael in holy matrimony." The ceremony passed in a haze of perfect moments. Charles's voice was steady and strong as he recited his vows, promises of love and partnership that he'd written himself, and that made several people in the congregation wipe away tears. "Lirael," he said, his gray eyes locked on hers, "you came into my life when I thought my story was over, and you taught me that it was just beginning. You showed me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be perfect for them. You've been my salvation, my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love. I promise to cherish you, to challenge you, to support your dreams and share your burdens. I promise to love you through every season of our lives, in joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, for all the days of my life." When it was her turn, Lirael's voice was clear and strong, despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Charles, you taught me that love isn't about being grateful for scraps of affection. It's about finding someone who sees your worth and celebrates it every day. You've shown me what it means to be truly valued, truly chosen, truly loved. You and Owona and Kara have given me the family I always dreamed of, but never dared to hope for. I promise to love you with my whole heart, to stand by your side through every challenge, to be your partner in all things, and to build a life with you that honors both who we are and who we're becoming together." "The rings," Father Martinez announced, and Owona stepped forward with Charles's ring, while Kara presented Lirael's wedding band. As they exchanged rings, both of them were crying openly, and half the congregation was sniffling along with them. "By the power vested in me by the state of Florida and Almighty God," Father Martinez proclaimed, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Charles, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was tender, passionate, and full of promise, a perfect beginning to their married life. The church erupted in applause and cheers, but Charles and Lirael were lost in each other, in the moment, in the overwhelming gratitude for a love that had conquered every obstacle. "Mrs. LaPlante," Charles whispered against her lips, and the name sent shivers of joy through her entire body. "Mr. LaPlante," she whispered back, "take me home." The reception was held in the garden of their mansion, transformed into a wonderland of white flowers, twinkling lights, and pure magic. The twins held court at their own small table, telling anyone who would listen about how Miss Lirael was now their real mommy, and how they'd helped plan the whole wedding. "Speech! Speech!" Hawthorne called out as the sun began to set, and Charles stood up, pulling Lirael to her feet beside him. "When I lost Elena," Charles began, his voice carrying clearly across the garden, "I thought my story was over. I thought the best parts of my life were behind me. I was wrong. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Better one." He looked down at Lirael, his love for her written clearly across his face. "Today I married my best friend, my partner, my soulmate, and the love of my life. But more than that, I married the woman who saved my daughters and gave them back their childhood, their laughter, their joy." Charles turned to address Owona and Kara directly. "Girls, I know you understand that Miss Lirael, Mommy Lirael, didn't replace your first mommy. She could never do that, and she would never want to. But she's given you something just as precious, a second chance at having a mother's love." Both twins were beaming, chocolate cake smeared on their faces, but happiness shining in their eyes. "To my wife," Charles concluded, raising his champagne glass, "thank you for teaching me that love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to complete yourself. Here's to our forever." As the crowd toasted and applauded, Lirael felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. She was no longer the woman standing on the outside looking in. She was home, surrounded by people who loved her, married to a man who cherished her, mother to two beautiful girls who filled her heart to overflowing. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed, and the twins had been tucked into bed with extra kisses and promises that Mommy Lirael would still be there in the morning, Charles and Lirael stood on their terrace overlooking the garden, where they'd shared their first real conversation, their first fight, their first kiss. "Any regrets?" Charles asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Lirael leaned back against his chest, marveling at how perfectly she fit there. "Only one." "What's that?" "I wish it hadn't taken us so long to get here." Charles laughed, the sound rich and warm in the Miami night. "But think of how much we appreciate it, because it wasn't easy. Think of how much stronger our love is because we had to fight for it." She turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "I love you, Charles Laplante, forever and always." "I love you too, Mrs. Laplante, forever and always." As they kissed under the stars, with the sound of the ocean in the distance and the scent of jasmine in the air, both of them knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, joys to celebrate, children to raise, dreams to pursue together. But whatever came, they would face it hand in hand, heart to heart, as partners in every sense of the word. Their love story had weathered every storm, conquered every obstacle, and emerged stronger on the other side. And now, finally, forever could begin. 2 years later. "Daddy, Mommy Lirael, come quick." Owona's voice carried from the garden where she and Cara were playing with their new baby brother, little James Charles Laplante, who had arrived 6 months earlier to complete their perfect family. Charles and Lirael exchanged knowing looks as they hurried outside, already anticipating another adventure in their beautifully chaotic life. Love, as it turned out, was just the beginning of their happily ever after. The end.